We think the future of education, and again, we're already seeing trends indicating this, where there'll be periods of intense education, back into the workforce, may step out again for reskilling, recredentialing, enter the workforce again, may step out for caregiving duties, which everybody is going to be a caregiver at some point. So we think the future of education is much more cyclical. That doesn't mean that we eliminate education early in life. There is so much foundational work that occurs in those early years. But we think that the idea of you go to pre-K at 4 and you graduate from college when you're 22 is a model that will become, there'll be many variations on that model, including not going to college.
Hello, and welcome to Not Born Yesterday, a podcast dedicated to older adults and the challenges and joys of aging. I'm Miriam Goodman.
Not Born Yesterday is brought to you by Next Village SF, a local nonprofit providing older adults in the Northeast neighborhood of San Francisco with support to help age in place. I'm Lynn Winter-Gross.
Today on Not Born Yesterday, we're going to talk about longevity. In our fast-changing world, research has shown that the lifespan of children born today is going to be significantly longer than ours is now. The prediction is that soon the average person will live to be 100 or more. We don't know if this is good news or bad news, as a society of 100-year-olds poses a challenge to both advanced economies and those still struggling. Is longevity a privilege restricted to those with financial security? How will we adapt to this major demographic change? If we live longer, will we have to work longer as well? Is there a ticking time bomb? How will this impact our world as we know it? In one of our earlier podcasts, we talked about the term silver tsunami and how it has been a negative phrase. After all, a tsunami is a destructive and deadly surprise. Our aging population is no surprise to anyone who's been watching and researching longevity. Older people should not be blamed for living longer. Our society as a whole should have been better prepared, and some groups are now trying to catch up.
In 2018, the Stanford Center on Longevity created an initiative called the New Map of Life. Its purpose is to study the impact of changes. They're looking at things like how will the extra years affect our work life, our families, our financial security, medical care, educational systems, and our communities. Our guest today is Martha Deevy, the Associate Director and Senior Research Scholar at the Stanford Center on Longevity. She leads the center's financial security research program, focusing on issues related to retirement. Welcome to Not Born Yesterday, Martha.
Thank you, Lynn and Miriam. I'm glad to be here.
It may seem a bit shocking to many of our listeners to hear that in the not-so-distant future, the average child born today will live to be 100. It seems that living longer is a good thing only if we are mentally sharp, physically fit, and financially secure. Is this truly good news, and are we prepared for this?
Wow, there's a couple of things to unravel in there. So yes, all of the demographics indicate that children born today are very likely to live to 100. And all indications are that they will live more healthfully through those years. So I think one of the attitudinal shifts that we all have to make is that we think of old age, we think of long lives quite pessimistically. And we think of our later years as a period of decrepitude. And that's not what we are beginning to experience. By self-reported measures, people well into their 80s say they're healthy enough to work and they want to work. Chronic conditions that would have killed us 20, 30, and 40 years ago are now quite manageable. So I think while our life expectancy has been increasing every decade, our mental attitudes, our social norms, our cultural norms have not yet caught up. And I think we're at a tipping point where we now see more people. We have many more examples of people living longer, more healthfully, more engaged, and now recognizing that a lot of our underlying cultural infrastructure needs to shift.
You mentioned engaged, and at the recent conference on longevity, we learned that the quality of our relationships has a lot to do with how successfully we age. Does the new map of life or any of your research suggest that new approaches can be incorporated into our lives to basically reduce the isolation so many older adults experience?
Yeah, actually, there was some interesting work done during COVID. And the population, the segment of the population that suffered the least from isolationism were older adults. And some of that, the researchers are still trying to unravel what that is all about. But older people found engaging through virtual networks or social media was allowed them to continue to be connected to their communities. Whereas younger people really did feel sort of very disconnected. And I think that's a finding that people who aren't familiar with the research find quite surprising. But overall, the research indicates that as people get older, they become more satisfied, they become more content, they become happier. They focus on a tight network and a tight community. Older people aren't actively seeking out, brand new networks of people. They'd rather be connecting with the people they've cared about for a long time.
One of the speakers at the conferences talked about aging, brain aging, and education, changes in education. And we hear that there's elementary school, then high school, then college, then finished. And then that model is changing, that older adults might go back to school, or people might not be going to college the same as they are now. What do you see with that?
I see the future of education looking very different than what traditional education looks like today. And I have to tie that up into something you started off with. Will we be working longer? Well, if we're going to be living to 100, we probably are going to work longer in order to finance those longer lives. But frankly, we also find that work for many people, not all, it provides meaning and purpose and engagement and community. So there's really no reason, if we're going to be, living to 100, that we have to cram education into the first 20 years of life. And with longer working lives, we're already seeing it. People are finding the need to either change careers or gain new skills. And so we think the future of education, and again, we're already seeing trends indicating this, where there'll be periods of intense education, back into the workforce, may step out again for reskilling, recredentialing, enter the workforce again, may step out for caregiving duties, which everybody is going to be a caregiver at some point. So we think the future of education is much more cyclical. That doesn't mean that we eliminate education early in life. There is so much foundational work that occurs in those early years. But we think that the idea of, you go to pre-K at 4 and you graduate from college when you're 22 is a model that will become, there'll be many variations on that model, including not going to college, going to trade school. There's sort of a growing interest in alternative paths to good middle income jobs that don't involve 4-year degrees.
Yes, I remember somebody talking about that at the conference, and I don't know if it was there, but somewhere recently I heard that there's an idea to have a gap year at the age of 50. That why should we have why just do it when you're 20 or 18 or whatever it is? And it seems like an innovative way to get back into your career or start a new career or something like that. So I know we've heard recently how France is increasing the age of retirement so people will work longer, and there's been a lot of protests about that. But I guess the bottom line is the current system just can't fund all the pensions that are required. And the World Economic Forum reported that reskilling would increase workplace productivity by trillions of dollars. Do you think this is likely to happen in the United States? Will employers have a mindset they want to take people in their 70s and 80s?
I'm an optimist, but not a wild-eyed optimist. I think employers are slowly beginning to realize the value in retaining and attracting older workers. Just even today's unemployment numbers, we're seeing record unemployment, and employers everywhere are having trouble finding people to fill the spots. So when I think my background is I was a corporate person. I ran divisions. I lived my life by a P&L. And I think when there is economic motivation is when you will see companies begin to value that part of their population. There's also a growing body of literature about the productivity, the bottom line productivity improvements experienced in workforces that are multi-generational. And again, the more evidence there is that it's good for the bottom line, I think the more likely employers will work harder to attract and retain. And you see it with some of the large multinational companies who, in their and other countries who are aging more rapidly than the United States, they're already making moves to keep their older workers in place because they just don't have people to replace them. So it's not happening as quickly as I would like. We've been looking at this for about, I've been with the center for 14 years. We've been looking at this for 14 years. And I'd have to say it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that companies will even acknowledge that maybe they want to attract and retain their older workers. So slow changes, I think they'll be economically driven, and I am an optimist that we will begin to see changes.
Martha, you talked about the advantages of people working together of different generations. Do you see any changes in how we'll be living? We hear the advantages of multi-generations living together. Do you see that changing in the future?
So there were trends in place even before COVID, where in the US particularly, we saw an increase in multi-generational housing. Grandparents, kids, grandchildren. Early on, a little bit of it was financially motivated, and we began to see these trends after the 2008 recession. COVID really accelerated it for reasons that we all know about. What's really interesting is that I think it was Pew does a regular millennial survey, and they have gone out repeatedly and have asked about this multi-generational trend. And the number of people who are entered into multi-generational households pre-COVID and during COVID who are still satisfied with the arrangement and don't see it changing exceeds 70%.
Do you think we'll have new ways to celebrate getting older? Positive ceremonies that celebrate us as we get older?
Oh man, I hope so. We actually have an annual salon. It's a small group salon with the support of a generous donor that is actually intended to explore how we create positive transitions throughout later life. Because right now, it's like the last celebration is retirement. And then, your memorial service, and there's a big gap in between. So there's lots of interest in looking at how do we create those other celebratory moments. And, you may retire from one thing, but let's celebrate the next thing you enter into. So I think that my kids' generation will find lots of things to celebrate because I don't really think they'll ever really retire the way we think about retirement. And 30 years to celebrate nothing is quite a long time.
We've also read a lot recently about smart houses and the way technology is going to be able to help older people age in place. Are there approaches to longer living that will keep older people safe and healthy through up-to-date housing? Have you seen anything like that coming along?
Yeah, there is a lot. 5 years ago, there was a lot of speculation about how technology could improve people's living situations. But whether it's using house sensors, there's a lot of technology in the works beyond prototype, including things like sensors that can gauge how frequently somebody may be getting up off the couch as a sign of mobility. How it could measure their gait. There are sort of exoskeletons, lightweight exoskeletons that will allow people to continue to be more mobile on their own and not as dependent on aids, whether it be walker aids or aids. There's a whole new wave of wearable technologies that we will be able to like keep track of symptoms before they even become evident. Whether it's things around blood pressure or, cardiac arrhythmia tracking or, even sweat, which can give sort of real-time diagnostics before any symptoms exhibit themselves. So I think there's a whole new category of technologies that will not only aid people in staying mobile, but will provide earlier warnings when something needs attention.
Is there anything else that we missed that you wanted to mention?
Another key strategic thrust for the center is changing the conversation. Think about how we started this conversation, where old age was all about decrepitude and frailty, and we spend a lot of time talking about how living long lives is an opportunity, and having more older people is a great asset, and we just have to tap into it.
Martha, thank you so much for sharing this valuable information with us. That was Martha Deevy of Stanford's New Map of Life.
Today on News You Can Use, we're going to talk about birthday cards. No matter our age, it's nice to hear from friends on our birthdays and to know that they're thinking about us. But when it comes to birthday cards for older adults, you may have noticed that what passes for humor is actually very ageist. Most likely you found cards that make fun of our brains, our bodies, our health, or our ability to get out of rocking chairs. These cards portray old age as not giving us much to celebrate. In fact, according to these cards, we should feel bad about aging. We know that ageism is both prevalent and harmful. Studies show that ageism has negative effects on our health, even on how long we live. We often inflict these ideas on ourselves because we've internalized the ageism that's around us. Many of us love funny cards and cards that are silly or clever, but people have defended the worst of these ageist cards as just a joke or a little humor just between the sender and receiver. But it is possible to be funny and celebratory without being ageist.
Changing the Narrative is a group dedicated to challenging all things ageist. They believe that making fun of getting older is bad for your physical and mental health and shouldn't be promoted in any way, much less birthday cards. They believe we need more messages that are clever and fun without all the age bashing about sagging body parts and increasing irrelevance. Recently, they created a campaign to encourage people to come up with birthday cards that are funny and respectful and oppose the former over-the-hill humor. Changing the Narrative asked designers to design age-positive cards and recently announced 10 winners.
They said that they chose the artists based on their creative talents and their enthusiasm to join the movement to end ageism, said Janine Vanderberg, director of Changing the Narrative. We invited experienced, professional, and successful greeting card designers to participate in the contest. The wonderfully diverse designs share one thing, a message that age is something to celebrate. We can't show you the cards on the podcast, but here are a few examples of the messages of the winning birthday cards.
We are standing on the shoulders of giants. Thank you for being a giant.
Great stories take time.
Count your blessings, not your candles.
And here's our personal favorite. You don't look a day over fantastically fabulous. If you're about to buy a birthday card for a friend, now you have a choice of buying a card that will make the recipient feel good about getting older. To buy a card created by one of this year's winners, go to changingthenarrativeco.org.
That's our podcast for today. Our thanks to our guest Martha Deevy of Stanford's New Map of Life. You can learn more about Next Village SF at their website, nextvillagesf.org. Our theme music is from Hook Sounds, and Jason Dahlstadt is our engineer. And thank you for listening. We would love to hear what you would like us to discover and discuss. Please contact us at notbornyesterdaypodcast.org. Be well, stay strong, and remember, you weren't born yesterday. I'm Lynn Winter Gross.
And I'm Miriam Goodman.